Hi everyone, my name's Ethan and I'm from 3D Circuitry. I'm super excited that you'll get to learn about electronics today by actually soldering circuit boards and components together. But before we start, there's a few things you should know. So let's start with the kits that each one of you have been given. In each of these kits, you'll find a few important things. First off, the circuit boards. The circuit boards provided in each of your kits are the same circuit boards that you would find in the real world. Circuit boards are often referred to as PCBs, or printed circuit boards. PCBs are used in nearly all electronics today due to their small compact design, which helps eliminate a lot of wiring. There would be no need for circuit boards if it weren't for components such as LEDs, switches, and resistors. These components will help your kit light up and bring life to your circuit board project. Most components are delicate compared to circuit boards and can only handle short exposure to a soldering iron, or the component could end up not working when the kit's completed. To learn more about the components in your kit, take a look at the educational cards. You can distinguish them by their hexagonal shape. On the front side of the card, you'll see which component you're reading about, and on the back side, you'll see an interesting fact about that component. The color of the card determines the knowledge level of the information provided. For example, the blue and green cards you received contain beginner information. Now on to the instructions. The instructions are specific to your kit and will help you complete it. On the front card of the instructions, you'll find a QR code. Scanning this will allow you to access your kit's instructions in a video format. This can be helpful to visualize the step. The next card in the instructions is the reference card. This card has a detailed breakdown of all the components and boards in the kit along with their names and quantities. And finally, before you complete your kit, make sure to fully go over the must-read card. This card briefly outlines important information on most of what we are going over today. In each step, you'll find the necessary items listed and quantified at the top of the card. There's also an illustration that acts as a visual of what's happening in the step. The text below the illustration is broken down into subtasks to help you complete the step. A battery is included to power up the kit once you've completed the soldering. And I'm going to begin by going over some safety precautions to take when using the tools. To start the project, it's always important to wear your safety glasses. Your teacher should have provided you with soldering iron if it's not already in your kit. These soldering irons heat up to extremely hot temperatures to melt solder, a metal substance we use to hold components and PCBs in place. Do not ever touch the soldering iron in its metal areas. In order to set your soldering iron down properly, use the stand to hold it off the table. To complete your setup, wet your sponge with water and place it in front of the soldering iron stand. It'll be helpful to clean the soldering iron in between steps. With your soldering iron safely in its stand, go ahead and plug it in. Find the switch and turn it on. Set the dial on your soldering iron to 450 degrees Celsius. Be mindful of where you put your soldering iron so you don't bump the hot end when working on a step. And finally, don't get up and leave your area without turning off and unplugging your soldering iron. The PCB holder is for gripping circuit boards to allow for easier soldering of components. Here I'll demonstrate how to use it. After placing a component into a circuit board, as I'm doing now, use the alligator clips to help grab the circuit board on the opposite end. Now, you can solder the board without it moving away from you. Now there's also a magnifying glass, and this can help you to see what you're soldering. This tool can come in handy for smaller circuit boards, but use it however you feel in order to get the kit done with ease. Finally, the snips are used to cut off excess leads from the components after being soldered. Be careful when using the snips, as they're extremely sharp, and watch where you're cutting, as the component leads can sometimes fling off. We will give you a few tips on how you can easily complete your kit even if you've never picked up a soldering iron. So let's start with the components. Light-emitting diodes, or LEDs, are used in all of your kits, so it's important to know the proper direction to put them in the circuit board. The longer lead of the LED is the anode, and the shorter lead with the flat side of the plastic is the cathode. It's just another way of saying positive and negative. The shortest lead on the LED should always line up with the circuit board with the hole closest to the flat side of the printed circle. Soldering the LED in backwards won't cause any damage to the circuit or even the LED. The only effect is the LED won't turn on. You can fix this by unsoldering it and flipping it around, but remember that components are time sensitive when it comes to soldering, and they can be damaged if overexposed to high heat for too long. It is better to just make sure you put the LED in correctly the first time around. More importantly than LED orientation is reading the instructions from top to bottom correctly. The order of the steps is from top to bottom. If you have the spaceship kit, remember to look at what resistor you are supposed to be using for each step. To differentiate the resistors, use the color bands. Now I'll go over a few soldering tips. The two types of soldering you're going to be doing is board-to-board soldering and component-to-board soldering. For component-to-board soldering, stick your soldering iron in between the lead of the component and the solder pad on the circuit board. After 1 to 2 seconds, push solder between the soldering iron and the solder pad. For board-to-board soldering, start by holding the soldering iron on the edge of the section you are soldering. Let it heat up for 2 to 3 seconds, and then hold your solder to the connection of the two boards, moving both the solder and the iron along the joints to complete the soldering. Solder joints should not touch because that can mean you are crossing traces on the circuit board. To be safe, you should always fix every solder joint that is touching another solder joint by simply remelting the solder and moving it out of the way. One last thing to mention is the availability of helpful resources. The PowerPoint following this video will go over the fun facts and information within all of your kits and includes each kit's instructions in a digital format. You can access all of the educational resources we've mentioned and more videos by visiting www.circuitry3d.com/instructions.